Hey guys, this is Spence. Wanted to welcome y'all to our annual look inside some EM pinball machines. We just used these in our 4th annual electromechanical only tournament, and this is our first year to not be at the house. This year we were hosted at the Game Preserve's wonderful NASA location. So first, we're going to go look at the games that got out on the main floor, then we'll come back and look at the games that were brought in specially for the tournament. Let's go. Alright, now we're on the main floor here at the Game Preserve NASA. Got a lot of games out here. Right now I just have the EM ones turned on. So let's get started looking inside. We've got a couple of our oldest games here. We like our space theming, so we've got Universe from 1959 and Williams Friendship 7, just a few years newer. Here in 1959 we've got our only wood rail game, meaning that it's got these wooden rails on the side as opposed to the metal that was surrounding the cabinets later on. And so with those you've also got these little metal doohickeys here for you to rest your cigarette on when you were playing this in a bar or bowling alley. Consequently, these are only made to last for a few years, in such an establishment. They may look a little dirty and run down now, but overall it's pretty impressive they're still going, 60 years later. And another thing not original are these wires you may see hanging down. These are for the AFC, the Adaptive Flipper Control, I believe is the acronym. It's developed by the folks at our northern location. We're at the south location, but it's a little plug-in controller that just uses an audio jack in the bottom of the game. You have this controller you can ask for at the front desk or have your own for in your own home. That has 2 buttons on it. They make different models. I promise not an ad, we'll move on quickly, but you have these 2 buttons so you can control the game with one hand. Pretty neat. Anyways, on an old game like this, the balls are all held in this trough underneath. And when you start a game, this little flap will lift up, lets the balls roll down, where they then reach the little second plunger thing underneath there. You push on that lifts the balls up to the playfield one at a time. And of course, you have your shooter rod. Fun feature on this game is if you've ever lifted a playfield on a newer game and had all the balls dump out onto the playfield, you'd worry about a game like this dumping them all out underneath. But it's got this neat feature where the balls can only come out if the game's in the lowered position or you push against this flap. Because when it raises up, this locks them in. If you lower the game down, this is naturally going to rest down in the cabinet. That gets pushed and all the balls can roll out. Anyway, this is the whole little reset drop bank of all the targets that you're hitting. So you're trying to collect these numbers 1 through 8, which are at the bottom of the playfield and up here at the top, going through this mass number of flippers. So as you collect each of them, it trips down here. When it resets the game, it pulls that in to reset them. So you have a little score motor and everything. This is the little horizontal sort of score motor that Gottlieb used for decades, that sort of style. Nothing else too remarkable in here. We've got our little tilt pendulum, the little tilt ball for if you lift the front of the game. It's actually enclosed in a little box. I'm not sure why exactly they did that. That was discontinued. You'll see they're all open later on. Here in the center of the game, you've got this gobble hole, which is where your ball drains if it falls in there, but you can collect a good deal of points. But if it falls in there, you notice there isn't a switch right there. But as the ball drains, it runs over the switch about halfway down the track, and that's what gives you your points before it's dropped back here in your collection trough, where it then rolls over these switches as it's collected. In the back, you've got this neat animation of these rocket ships that go around as you collect things. In the back, I don't know about our lighting here, but we've got just a little ball that pulls that around. Just one little coil that yanks up, spring pulls it down, and that's what advances your rocket ships. Alright, over here in Friendship 7, there, actually remember to turn on the light on this one. We've got an early Williams score motor. Later on you'll see they changed to a different sort of model. I think I said it wrong over there, but yeah, this has the one with the vertical shaft, just like Gottlieb. Later on there'll be a horizontal shaft with all the little cams mounted on there. This one's got a much smaller reset bank than on Universe next to us here. That's what, when you collect some of your letters and things, that's what resets on here. Friendship 7 are the letter, so you've got friendship are the letters you're trying to collect. Well, you're not collecting them, you are trying to match them. Sorry. You've got your letters in here and the letters here, which I like since there are two I's in friendship. You've got one uppercase I and one lowercase I. But you match those in order to win an extra ball. We've got our little John Glenn there. Nothing else too much out of the ordinary here, other than on Universe, there was 1 ball per ball in play. So you'd have 5 balls loaded in the trough. We're getting a little more advanced here. They have just 1 ball that gets used over and over. So whenever it drains, it runs over these switches. Have the little gate that releases it, and then lift it up to the playfield. And then, instead of on Universe where it has the pendulum and the little ball tucked in that box, here we've got a thing they tried for a while, where instead of the ball in a box, you've got your pendulum, but then also a mercury tilt switch. This has a little bead of mercury you may see jiggling around in there. It's fully enclosed, nothing dangerous, you just can't crack the glass. So you've got a bead of mercury in there. If you lift the game up to try and cheat and roll the ball up to the top, then mercury is going to slide over here and make a connection between those 2 points and tilt the game. Here we'll move on to another Williams game. This time, Beat Time, the very much not licensed Beatles game, hence the Boodles. Under here, we've gone to the later Williams score motor you might be more familiar with, where it's got the horizontal shaft and all these cams on it. A little easier to see what's going on there. Got our more traditional now tilt mechanisms. Yes, some extra wires in here for those AFC controls. They just clip on. Pretty dang easy to install. The neatest mechanism on here, though, is the clock. So you've got your 12, 3, 6, and 9 for like your 4 kind of cardinal directions on the clock that you collect by hitting this little target or running over the lanes at the top. But anyway, you would hit this, you'd light up the number 3, and then you'd collect the number 3, and then it rotates to the next number. You hit it, and you get to move on. You can collect all 4 from this one spot. Yes, note my wonderful number 12 that I sharpied on there. But anyway, how can you hit one target and get 4 different things? Well, under here, when you hit the target, I'm going to push on it, all it does is tilt back. So as it tilts back, it lifts up that disc. There are no physical switches up here. This is all just a big chunk up there for all that it cares for. So all it does is rotate that back, and it makes contact with that switch. That'd be all good and well if you only had one thing to collect, but it needs to know which number you hit. So further down on the shaft, you've got these 4 different switches, 2 here and 2 here, that interact with a couple nubs on this shaft. So as the shaft turns, it pushes in a different switch. So right now, let's see, it's rotated around to where this is pushing in this top switch. So right now, this is the only switch pushed in, and we're on the number 3. So that would have to be the switch that's closed to award you 3. Then if we're going to move up to 6, it moves to where this is now pressed in. So that's how that gets coded out. Over here across the way, we're moving slightly newer with another game, this time from Bally. Fireball. I've already looked into this one in a previous video, so if you want the details on that, you'll have to check that out. It's a different copy, but same game. We'll move along to a couple of our slightly newer space-themed games. So these are the last 2 games we're going to cover here that are normally on the floor here at NASA. We've got Space Odyssey. This is a 2-player game. There's a 4-player version called Space Mission, which you may be familiar with. And then Pioneer, which has a 4-player Spirit of 76. Anyway, here in Space Odyssey, we've got that same sort of score motor, but we've moved on to chimes. All the previous games have just had bells. Nothing too out of ordinary for mechanisms here. Instead of having your normal slingshots in the corner, it has little kickouts, but they function the same way as slingshots, just how it interacts with the ball. That instead of having the rubber ring that launches it, just has a little slot the ball falls in and it gets kicked out. In the center, you have a moving target that oscillates back and forth. It's just got a little clockwork looking mechanism here. that moves that arm back and forth. And the arm just has a simple target on it with some long flexible wires. That's all there is to that. It just moves back and forth. On Pioneer, it's maybe my favorite of the EM games here. Once again, got chimes. But see here, Gottlieb's stuck with this score motor design instead of going with that horizontal one that the other companies used. Up there, you've got your reset bank, which has, you know, the A, B, C, D, E rollover lanes that you collect. It resets with that big bar. And then you've got drop targets, which are one of the funnest things in pinball. So when you hit the drop target up top, drops down each of these, and at each time it falls, you'll see it'll quickly close those switch contacts. And so as you move back, it collects each one of them, and as you hit the last target, it connects these switches on this side. And that's what'll show that the whole drop bank is down. Something to know while playing though, I actually give you some light here, is that note all of these switches, even though they're 4 separate switches, there are only 2 wires that go to them. And they just share this common bridge. So if you hit 2 at the same time, you're only getting 1 set of points. The EM games can't calculate that stuff fast enough. So it's just 2 wires that go to 4 targets. Hitting down more than 1 at the same time isn't going to help you. But anyway, that's the last of the games that are on the main floor. We're going to move back to see our visiting games next. Now here in the back, you'll see our visiting games, which were here exclusively for the tournament. Some of them might make appearances out on the game floor, but don't show up here expecting them to be here. If one's out, it's a pleasant surprise. Anyway, these 2, Hokus Pokus and Wizard, came from my friend Summer, who graciously lent them for use of the tournament. Then Captain Fantastic, Delta Queen, Mars Trek, Super Score, and King Tut are all currently part of my collection, along with Jolly Roger, which was in one of the previous videos. So let's take a look inside these 2. Alright, let's start here with King Tut. I don't have the playfield lifted on it because unfortunately most of the good things in this game are on the outside. Lovely art package, and like Fireball, it's got this neat playfield glass that's all on its own frame with its own prop rod. Very few things you can earn on this game, but what you can do are find ways to save the ball. It's got this little up post in the middle, kicker over here, and this little gate you can get to open to save the ball over here. And those are activated with these little mushroom bumpers up here. So unlike a pop bumper that kicks the ball back out, these ones are passive. The ball hits it and it just lifts up on this little switch. So let's look at that stuff from inside. Lift up this playfield, excuse me, use the prop rod. So all those little mushroom things are just little leaf switches that are open. If they go up, they close. Unfortunately, this game is from a period where Bally was trying to save a lot of money. You might have heard that bell. That's the only bell in the game. No chimes, 1 bell, 1 funky little knocker. But the worst way they save money, in addition to their horrible fuse blocks, were these giant mechanisms here. That this combines your usual score motor, you know, over on this end, with like the reset bank that would normally have reset by a coil. So instead of throwing in a couple coils, they just have this giant thing, which the back half is reset like on a bingo machine with all these little cams that are going to lift these up to reset them. So like that one, this has the letters T, U, and T at the top. So when you lift this switch, that little light's coming back on saying that that's the letter T, that's the U. But yeah, these correspond with each of the letters up there. So whenever the score motor is in use, like when a ball drains, all that rotates is this section down here. This is your normal score motor, but it's being run by that motor way down there. It has this common shaft that runs all the way through here. But that section is not currently engaged because of a little plastic clutch mechanism, which is the hard part of this. That little thing has to be working just right. And they don't maintain parts for it. So if that's broken, you need to 3D print, otherwise you're out of luck. So, anyways, this mechanism's horrible. So I'll show you when you start the game how that works to reset the whole thing. So I'm going to press the start button. We can reset some stuff. And hopefully it'll crank all that over to reset all of our numbers. It's each of those clicks. That's the game trying to restart. And of course, now that we're filming, it's not going to work. Come on, buddy. Oh, here we go. I had to give it a little help. It shouldn't have worked like that. There. See how easy that is? Anyway, just thought that segment was fun. All right. Next we have Super Score, but it's been covered in a previous video by me, and you also may have seen some of Erin's videos on it through her Learning to Flip and her science channels. Then we have Delta Queen. It's a Bally, a couple years newer, I think about 4 years newer. That was from 70, this one I think is 74. So fortunately by then they have ditched that monstrosity of a mechanism they put in King Tut. But otherwise, I don't have anything terribly remarkable to say on this one. It has one little kick-out hole in the middle, which shoots the ball back down towards the flippers. And so I mean all that is one coil that pulls in, pushes that up, and that's what flings the ball out. But I don't think we have any other unique mechanisms in here to show off. Which brings us to our last games of Captain Fantastic, Wizard, and Hokus Pokus. They all have mechanisms to show if you have rolled over the score, meaning that the score reels have gone to where they're saying 9999. This one stays 0 because it's a fake reel on all of these. They inflated the score a bit with that. But when this rolls over, these all go to 0, but then it shows over the top will be lit up here. So you know this is the oldest game because when that over the top is lit, it would set off this buzzer. I have unplugged it for the video because it is extremely loud. When this gets pulled in, you'll see this light bulb will turn on, and that hold circuit actually runs through the bulb. So as long as that bulb stays lit, that over the top's gonna stay lit. But this is one of the old like little blinking flasher bulbs that's in the back glass of the game. So like on Wizard, we're down there where it says Tommy, how that pinball's flashing. That's one of these bulbs. It has a little bimetallic strip that heats up. So as it heats up, it turns the bulb off. And in this case, they use that as a little temporary hold circuit so that over the top light doesn't stay on for too long, or that buzzer. So you'll push this, the light will turn on, and then when it gets hot, it'll release. So then if I point up here, do the same thing. Of course I'm zoomed in, but we push that right coil in, there we go, and it lights up over the top. So that's what's going to let the world know that you rolled it. Actually, what's going to let the world know is this buzzer here. I'll plug it in so you get to hear its majestic song. Isn't that lovely? That does let the whole arcade know that you rolled the game over. So Hokus Pokus has the over-the-top light and the buzzer. And that's how Captain Fantastic started, but they changed it partway through its run. So it's got this window that would have originally said over the top, but by the time this one was produced, it has little individual things. Now, you probably can't see it in the camera, but it has 100,000 for first player, 100,000 for second player, etc. So they had to use that same window. It's still got the buzzer though. By the time Wizard came around though, I think they've ditched the buzzer, or I sort of couldn't find it in here, and they've moved the 100,000s each to correspond to the numbers, which this is something that Space Odyssey had that we looked at earlier. So it's got 100,000 for each of the players. Now the fun mechanism on here though are these little flipping domino looking things. I think they called them flags. So you collect these by hitting different targets or rollovers on the playfield. So say you hit this 4 flag here, this little thing gets flipped over. And it shows that now the spinner is activated. You get higher points for it. And it knows what side it's on with this little switch. And that little tab that goes down to a switch. And you'll see for flipping it over, there are these little pins you can see here, which engage with this metal weight there. So it's not, you know, digging into this little, I guess it's wood or plastic little domino. You see there's a pin on each side to flip it back and forth. You might think there's a different mechanism for each side, but actually, no. Let's grab the light. Sorry, I forgot my light. Here we go inside the game. So seeing those little flags flip back and forth, it's controlled with these little coils underneath. So there's a coil there, and instead of yanking down on something, it's pulling this weight up into the coil, which pushes on this U-shaped bar. And so each of those are the tabs on each side of that flag. So it pushes up once, flips it to the right. You see this little bar's up, that means the flag is not resting on it. Push it again, and it flips over, and now it's holding that down. So it's just one coil, can flip it in both directions. Yeah, I think that's about it for our unique mechanisms in these games. So thanks for tagging along, looking at some of these games we had visiting at the Game Preserve. So shout out to the Game Preserve NASA, thanks for having us. And to those like John Spates who helped run the tournament, and to Summer for bringing her games, and everyone who came to participate. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next year.